With all the accusations, lawsuits, and recriminations around this year's election, most people seem to have missed one very important problem. Before the voting even started, the federal judiciary interfered with elections in several states. I'll not only explain the problem and show some examples, but I will tell you what the American people can do about it.
There's one thing you have to know wherever you make your stand. Came from a long through line of everyday Americans.
Hello there, everyday Americans. Paul Engel here with the Constitution Study, where we read and study the Constitution and we teach the rising generation to be free. I am glad you can join me. I'm going to ask you to please share, like, subscribe to this video wherever you're finding it. Right now, I am in Facebook jail. That's right. As of this recording, Facebook's not letting me post anything, although I will try to post this once Facebook lets me out of jail. But if you're on YouTube, Rumble, Parler, Twitter, Instagram, if you're seeing this, please, again, like it, subscribe to the channel, like the page. Just help share this information with friends and family so we can better understand how our country is designed to work, how we can make sure our rights and liberties are protected, and more importantly, how we can protect the rights and liberties of others. Now, as of this recording, we are still going through the craziness of the presidential election, but I wanted to take some time and talk about what actually happened before the election and what its impact is and why it's important. To understand how badly the federal judiciary interfered with the election, you need to understand a fundamental point about the process. You see, there is only one national election in this country, and in 2020, it hasn't happened yet. The only national election is when the presidential electors meet in their respective states and vote for president and vice president. Amendment 12 of the Constitution says the electors shall meet in their respective states and vote by ballot for president and vice president, one of whom at least shall not be an inhabitant of the same state with themselves. Now, every other election is either a state or a local election. Even elections for federal offices like members of the House of Representatives, senators, and yes, presidential electors are state elections, not federal ones. Now, Article 1, Section 2, Clause 1 of the Constitution reads, "The House of Representatives shall be composed of members chosen every second year by the people of the several states." And the 17th Amendment to the Constitution reads, "The Senate of the United States shall be composed of 2 senators from each state, elected by the people thereof for 6 years." And finally, Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2 of the Constitution reads, "Each state shall appoint in such manner as the legislature thereof may direct a number of electors equal to the whole number of senators and representatives to which the state may be entitled in the Congress." In fact, the only power the federal government has in the election process is the setting of Election Day and the day when the presidential electors cast their ballots. Congress does have the authority to alter state law regarding the times, places, and manner of holding elections for the House and Senate seats, but they cannot regulate where senators are chosen, nor can they regulate any part of the presidential election except for the dates. See, Article 1, Section 4, Clause 1 says, "The times, places, and manner of holding elections for senator and representatives shall be prescribed in each state by the legislature thereof, but the Congress may at any time by law make or alter such regulations except as to the places of choosing senators." Going on in Article 2, Section 1, Clause 4, we read, "The Congress may determine the time of choosing the electors and the day on which they shall give their votes, which day shall be the same throughout the United States." So let's discuss the role of the courts. You see, the judicial power of the United States is limited to issues arising under the Constitution, federal laws or treaties, along with certain international and interstate controversies. Article 3, Section 2, Clause 1 states, "The judicial power shall extend to all cases in law and equity arising under this Constitution and the laws of the United States and treaties made or which shall be made under their authority." It goes on to talk about ambassadors and interstate and international situations. That means the federal courts only have jurisdiction over election controversies that come under the Constitution and federal laws made pursuant to it. That's limited to the day of the election and the right of citizens to vote regardless of their race, color, previous condition of servitude, their sex, their age, or the paying of taxes. Now, any other intervention in the right of a state to conduct their elections is a violation of the Constitution, the judge's oath of office, and of good behavior. So first, let's look at the case of Texas Alliance for Retired Americans versus Ruth Hughes. Quote, plaintiffs renew their challenge of House Bill 25, a Texas election law which eliminated straight ticket voting, a century-old practice that allows Texan voters to cast their ballot for all candidates of their preferred political party with the click of a single box at the top of their ballot. Now, the people of Texas, through their legislators, decided to stop the practice of allowing straight ticket voting. They did so legally, following the legislative process in their state's constitution. Now, it's not exactly a surprise that everyone in Texas would not necessarily agree with this decision. Texas is a republic where the people hire representatives to exercise their sovereign power and where the will of the majority overrides the will of the minority as long as it does not infringe on their rights. So the question for today is, did HB 25 violate the rights of anyone in Texas? Well, reading from the court's order, we see, in these extraordinary times, plaintiffs call upon this court to uphold the fundamental right to vote. This right, so necessary for our democracy to function and flourish, is guaranteed to all citizens regardless of race, color, ethnicity, gender, income, or political affiliation. Where to start? First, a person's rights are not contingent on the times being extraordinary or not, and your rights neither increase nor diminish because of extraordinary times. Second, America is not a democracy. We are a republic, and each state is guaranteed a republican form of government by Article 4, Section 4 of the U.S. Constitution. Now back to the court's order. Plaintiffs seek to enjoin the state of Texas from implementing House Bill 25 and seek a declaration that this bill places undue burdens on the rights of voters, contravenes Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, and intentionally discriminates against the viewpoint of the Democratic Party. Now, the plaintiff's arguments are blatantly absurd. The Voting Rights Act of 1965 deals with the denying of a person's right to vote, not controlling how they vote. Quote, no voting qualification or prerequisite to voting or standard practice or procedure shall be imposed or implied by any state or political subdivision to deny or abridge the right of any citizen of the United States to vote on account of race or color. What we have here is a minority group of voters in Texas who are trying to overturn a legitimately adopted Texas law, and an activist federal judge apparently willing to help them. Next, let's look at Philip Randolph Institute of Ohio versus Frank Larose. In this case, I searched for the order from the district court, but I couldn't find it. So I'm using the description in the order issued by the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals in their stay of that order. Quote, plaintiffs, a collection of nonpartisan civil rights organizations and individual voters, filed this challenge on August 26, 2020 to Directive 2020-16, which concerns the placement of drop boxes for the collection of absentee voters' ballots. Now, Directive 2020-16 limits the places of ballot drop boxes to a location at each county board of education's office. As the circuit court noted, citizens of Ohio are not required to use a drop box, even for absentee voting, although I like the idea. Therefore, this directive does not impose a severe restriction on voting, much less a discriminatory restriction on the right to vote. This is the explanation the circuit court used to stay the district court's order pending appeal. While the opinion of the circuit court is a constitutionally sound win, it was only necessary because a district court judge interfered with the election process in the state of Ohio in violation of the judicial limits placed on them by the U.S. Constitution. Now, as usual, many of the reports I heard of federal courts interfering with the state's right to conduct elections were often overblown, or, like the Ohio case I just mentioned, a higher federal court is staying the actions of a lower one. In either situation, I'm concerned about the growing encroachment of the federal government, including the judiciary, on the power of the states to oversee their own elections. You may not like how another state conducts their election, and you may see it as impacting you when it comes to the election of the president. However, the Constitution left the power of conducting elections primarily in the hands of the states and their legislatures. As the evidence of fraud grows, the confidence in the election diminishes. Removing control over the election from the states and their citizens does two things. First, it further diminishes the rule of law in America. If we are going to allow our representatives, our elected employees, to ignore the law to get the outcome we prefer, well, then we are no longer a nation of laws, but of men. Second, by federalizing every issue, including overseeing a state's election, we drift further and further away from a union of states toward a democracy of fiefdoms. Why have a state if every controversy is a federal matter? We forget that the states created the federal government, not the other way around. We also forget that those same states limited the powers of the federal government. As the 10th Amendment states, the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively, or to the people. The Constitution only works when we, the people, force our elected employees to follow it. If the citizens of a state have hired representatives that will not follow the law, that's their problem to resolve. Will there be consequences for the union as a whole? Yes. That is the risk you take when you unite with other states in liberty and freedom. As with any other compact, it is the parties to it that are responsible for holding each other accountable. Therefore, it's the states that should hold each other accountable for following the compact, just as it's the responsibility of the citizens of those states to hold them accountable as well. If the people of a state wish to live in a criminal empire, they merely need to proceed down the road we've been on for decades. If, however, we want our governments to be intelligent, brave, and pure, we must demand that those we hire to represent us act that way or be considered unqualified for the office. As President James A. Garfield said, now more than ever before, the people are responsible for the character of their Congress. If that body be ignorant, reckless, and corrupt, it is because the people tolerate ignorance, recklessness, and corruption. If it be intelligent, brave, and pure, it is because the people demand these high qualities to represent them in the nation's legislature. If the next centennial does not find us a great nation, it will be because those who represent the enterprise, the culture, and the morality of the nation do not aid in controlling their political forces. If this is true for the national legislature, it is that much more true for our state and county legislatures. See, we the people have allowed ourselves to be lulled into imbecility. We are universally ignorant of our Constitution and the limitations it places on governments. Too many of us have been subdued by the siren song of the media, both social and traditional. We have turned our backs on freedom in exchange for a government check or program. The actions of many during this recent election show that we have become debauched in our manners. Is it any wonder that freedom and liberty are disappearing in America? If this continues, it will not be Russia or China that destroys this republic. We will do it to ourselves. As Samuel Adams noted, no people will tamely surrender their liberties, nor can be easily subdued when knowledge is diffused and virtue is preserved. On the contrary, when people are universally ignorant and debauched in their manners, they will sink under their own weight without the aid of foreign invaders. Sure, there's a lot to complain about in the recent election, both the presidential race and the other state and local contests. But here, I was looking at the fact that we have federal courts going beyond their jurisdiction to interfere with the elections held by the states. This is a time for the states to stand up, our state governments to stand up and tell the federal courts, no, you are not given authority to tell us how to run our elections. Congress can pass a law that says when we can do it and can modify the manner in which we can do it, but the federal courts have no authority to do that. And it's about time that the states, the creators of the federal judiciary, stand up and put their creation back in its place. If we want free and fair elections, we the people must demand them of our state and local agents. And if they won't do it, then we the people either fire them or accept the consequences, accept the responsibility for hiring crooks. There's no other way to put it. If you live in a city or a state that right now there is evidence of fraud and abuse, it is your fault, at least in part. You individually may not have voted for these people, But collectively, the people of that city and the people of that state are responsible. We want to point the fingers at someone else. Well, forget it. We got to point the finger right at ourselves. It is paraphrased that when the Times of London sent out a question in the paper saying, what's wrong with this country? Apparently, G.K. Chesterton sent a letter back, and they summarized his response as, in answer to your question of what's wrong with this country, I am. Sincerely, G.K. Chesterton. Well, it's about time the American people looked at their cities, looked at their states, looked at these instances, if not actual fraud, at least the appearance of fraud, and say, what is wrong with these cities and states? I am. Now, that isn't a lot of fun, but there's a lot of power in that. If I'm partially responsible, I can help fix it. I can look at the situations where there has the appearance of cheating, and I can stand up and say, I want this investigated. You, the representatives of this state, you, the employees of the people of the state, will investigate or you will be fired. And if you find wrongdoing, if we find malfeasance, they will be fired. And not just this election, but 2022, 2024, and every election afterwards, we need to hold our elected officials accountable, and we need to hold our state, local, and federal employees accountable as well. Sure, you may get the outcome you want by cheating, but remember, that also means your opponent may one day get the outcome they want by cheating as well. If we want this country to be one of intelligent, brave, and pure people, we must demand these qualities. It can't be a, gee, I would like it. It can't be a point our fingers and complain. We must demand these qualities, and we must act on that demand. Otherwise, what do we get? If there is ignorance, recklessness, and corruption in the election process in your city, your county, or your state, it is because you let it happen. Because you tolerated ignorance, recklessness, and corruption. Stop pointing the finger, stop trying to pass the buck, accept your responsibility, then do something about it. And for the rest of the nation, the other cities and counties and states that have to live with the consequences of these ignorant, reckless, and corrupt cities, states, and counties, it's about time we held them accountable as well. If they're not going to follow the rules, then we must sanction their actions. Now, how we do that's an interesting discussion, and one I'm not prepared to have right here, right now. But we start by recognizing these areas where there appears, there's at least the possibility, there seems to be some evidence of corruption in the election process. Remember, the people tolerated it. Now, if you want to find out more, head over to the website, constitutionstudy.com. You'll find lots of articles to share. You'll find lots of information you can use. You can always head over, follow the links, take the free U.S. Constitution class being offered by the Institute on the Constitution. They'll be more than happy to have you come and join them for this free class. And if you like this podcast, please consider donating to the podcast. Help keep the Constitution Study rolling. Help keep me able to post even when Facebook puts me in jail. Everything that gets donated from the website, go to constitutionstudy.com/donate. Everything you donate there goes 100% to keeping the Constitution Study podcast, these videos going. And if you want to support the work that I'm doing, well, consider buying a membership or buying a book or some other service that's up on the Constitution Study. But most of all, again, this is about information you can use. This is information you can share. This is hopefully information you find valuable. So you'll come back and join us the next time at the Constitution Study.
There's one thing you have to